Back when I was 12 years old, I first played the original Harvest Moon, the first popular agriculture sim for the Super Nintendo about building up a farm through the seasons of 1 year. Ever since then, the farming and agriculture genre has exploded with so many different games. So to return to that memory, in this video I decided to see what would happen if I played Stardew Valley for 100 days. It's technically one whole in-game year, which is 112 days, but I think that's a catchier title, and I'm technically not lying since I did, after all, survive at least 100 days. I'd never played Stardew before, which might come as a surprise since I've somehow avoided touching it all these years, but I always wanted to know why people loved this game so much. So I set out from the first day with a few goals, which I had no idea how or if I would ever even accomplish them. The first goal was to, well, make a lot of money. The second was to automate the farm. The farm must grow however I could make it, to explore all the game's systems and events. And ultimately 3, I just wanted to savor and enjoy the act of farming. As for the money, ultimately it feels kind of silly to impose such a harshly capitalistic goal on a game that's designed for relaxing like Stardew, but I figured if I had a number to base my success or failure off of, it was probably money. As for the automation, I somehow have this idea in the back of my head whenever I'm playing a simulation game that it's supposed to end up like Factorio, with all the machines running themselves without my help. The farm must grow. If the factory must grow, then the farm must grow too. But ultimately 3, savoring farming, was the most elusive goal that evaded my grasp throughout the challenge. But before I describe all the events that took place throughout the year, I'll just mention that I streamed almost the entire thing on Twitch, and posted the complete footage to my VOD channel in case for some godforsaken reason you want to witness my godlike ascent from a smooth-brained gardener into an enlightened philosopher king farmer. In total, it took around 26 hours to complete. But I had no idea of that from day one. I started off on the first day of spring as a total noob, a smooth-brained troglodyte. Stardew just throws you right in the deep end from the get-go. There's this giant farm that's just full of crap everywhere. The natural impulse is to clean and purge. So on the first few days of spring, I chopped up logs, destroyed stones, and felled trees where I'd later want to do some farming. Then I collected all the wood, rock, and plant fibers that resulted from their remains. Naturally, my next impulse was to visit Pierre's general store to get my seeds planted right away. But the main emotion I experienced was bewilderment. There's so much to do. Fishing, exploring the mineshaft, and upgrading buildings on my farm. Even pursuits like taking care of animals, or wooing a local woman to become my wife. It's sort of like real life in that there's so many options that it leads to this natural existential crisis. What am I supposed to do with my time? But at the back of my mind, I knew that planting seeds made time the most precious commodity. So it was paramount that I plant the highly profitable cauliflower seeds before I get sucked down all the rabbit holes inviting me down them. With the seeds in line, I spent the next couple days clearing the land. Once I had a little money, I'd want a blank slate to start from. Then I could get a clean start at farming. But it started to feel like kind of a hopeless endeavor. The yard was wild and nature would take it back in an instant. So I started to feel even more tired and overwhelmed. My energy bar kept draining down fast. I kept sleeping early, not even knowing what resources to use to regain my energy throughout the day. So on the third day when it rained, I visited old Willie on the dock to learn about fishing. This is an early pattern of my activity that made me feel bewildered, but I eventually learned to just give in to the overwhelming variety of ways to spend your time in this game, and stop trying to optimize everything. I also insisted pretty early on that my live stream audience just let me make mistakes unless I asked for help. The temptation to look up the answers of the best way to play the game is high, but it kinda sucks the fun out of exploration for me. I enjoy getting lost and savoring the experience. So I just let the farm go with the rain watering the crops, and I fished with old Willie for a little while. I collected more items and seashells, and I planted a few more seeds I'd dug up from all the weeds. Then I built a chest since my inventory was getting very full. That would let me store away all the new and interesting items I was encountering, like the mineral geodes I discovered from breaking rocks in my yard. I still didn't really know what to do with all the new items I was encountering, so I just sort of put them all into one big bucket. I spent most of the time thrusting my efforts into nothing in particular. There was so much to do that it was easy to just get lost and overwhelmed. A key limitation was my energy meter, which kept going down, and I didn't know how to replenish it yet. Except, of course, through eating the food, whose resale value seemed far more precious to me at the time. So most days I just crashed in bed early, wasting away most of the day. In the morning, I'd watch the weather report and the fortune teller on TV, but still not yet knowing what to do with the information. Generally, I leveled up in farming, foraging, and mining, meaning my energy bar would last just a little bit longer each day. I was getting stronger. Progress was rapid, but confusing, and I still didn't even know what I was supposed supposed to do yet with all my new capabilities. So I decided to keep exploring the town. I hate feeling like I'm wasting my time, but I figured that if I still didn't even know everything that the town had to offer, I wouldn't know what was the best way to spend my time. But some work was evidently right before me. I harvested my first parsnip crops on day 5. Then I ventured down the mine shafts to collect ores. Then on day 6, I harvested my first cauliflower crops, earning yet even more money to put toward more seeds. I kept off the first week by clearing more land, exploring the town hall with the mayor, and rebuilding the bridge on the beach for 300 wood to keep exploring and getting to know all of my options. While I just sort of threw myself aimlessly at the game, I felt like I had seen the main areas I could explore in that first week. Clearing land, farming, spelunking down the mine shafts, and fishing. Those were the main ones I had skills for, but then there were all these other pursuits and hobbies I didn't even know about yet, and it was more difficult to quantify. Raising animals, cooking, foraging, and even more fun side hobbies like collecting minerals for the local museum. Sometimes these would give little rewards. I discovered these only midway through the second week on the 11th, when I brought my geodes to Clint, the local blacksmith, to break open for rare gemstones. I got a cat from Marnie on day 12, and then I attended the annual egg hunt in the town square on day 13. I lost. But it was my first event, so I didn't let it get me down. By day 15, I'd cleared most of the debris out of the farm lot. Time was passing me by fast, but I began to see that I'd need to get organized to have a productive time in the summer. Now that I'd figured out most of the basics, I could be more efficient. So I plowed a field around my new scarecrow to make way for my future summer crops as I watched my lucrative cauliflower grow while I completed all my daily tasks. Spring drew closer and closer to summer, and I spent my third week through day 21 leveling up and continuing with all my farming and land clearing pursuits as I awaited the harvest. I attended the flower dance on the 24th, but I felt extremely lonely, for I had no time to woo woman, and I was spending all my days acquiring enough currency to attract a mate in the first place. I spent the remainder of spring feeling like I had failed, but also like I had learned a lot. I wanted to upgrade my tools to copper with Clint, the local blacksmith, so I built a furnace in front of my house, and I started using it to smelt copper from the ores I dug up out spelunking in the mine shaft just north of the town of Stardew. Spring ended, and as the summer sun rose, I made a big mistake planting more than I could harvest in the first season, so I took a big loss as I cut down withered crops from the former time, a mistake I'd be careful not to make again in the future. With the onset of summer, I did a much better job planting, buying 2 whole fields worth of blueberries and watermelons. I learned that you can get a mega watermelon if you plant them in 3x3 squares, but I did it wrong and I planted too few, thinking that they'd spread out instead of combine, which would set me back even a little bit more. Still, I got a lot of profitable crops growing out of it, but I awkwardly kept finding myself in the position of winding back up after the fields were planted with no money left in my pockets. So in the first week of summer, I just kept fully exerting myself throughout each day, watering my crops in the morning, and then throwing myself as deep down the mine shaft as I possibly could, in search of valuable ores to help me upgrade my tools and hopefully work more efficiently. I upgraded my axe to copper, then I attended the town luau at the beach, and I accidentally threw a bad ingredient into the stew. Everyone was upset, and then I went home. On the 15th, I harvested my first crop of watermelons. Then I replanted them right away for my best chance of getting mega watermelons. It feels great to be able to actually afford a full field's worth of crops and sow them in the ground. And then waking up on the 16th to the splendid sight of an entire field of ripe blueberries in the rain. Thriving growth, wealth, plenty, and an overwhelming sense of total satisfaction as I plucked all the bunches of blueberries off the bushes. It is satisfying. By the 21st of summer, I had made my way down the mine shaft beyond level 40, where I located iron and rare minerals. And with the blueberries growing back every few days, I had a steady supply of cash on hand for the first time, so I could invest the money into better tools, like a sledgehammer to help me fight the tougher enemies down the mine shaft, as well as allocate some more of my time toward collecting goods for the community center and other activities that seemed totally separate from my farming endeavors, like fishing off the dock. Summer drew to an end, and on the 27th, there was a great boon when I discovered, to my surprise, a mega melon had grown in my watermelon patch. The result of 9 combining. Its explosion released 19 melons I gathered for sale. And I made about 20,000 gold from the whole thing. Finally, with the blueberries sold at the market, I had a little over 34,000 gold, which I used to finance even more pumpkin and cranberry seeds to scale my planting efforts into the fall. By now I had gotten down some of the fundamentals. The best crops to plant, how to use the TV for recipes, weather reports, and the fortune teller to check if it was a lucky day to venture down the mine shafts. Watering my crops didn't kill my entire day's energy bar, and so I had more time for fishing, exploring the sauna, and paying Robin to build the chicken coop to the side of my house. It all freed me up to explore even deeper down the mine shafts in search of gold and whatever else lay beyond level 60. Around the 9th of fall, I realized I had let an entire year go by completely alone and isolated without looking for love, so I started wooing Leah by throwing salad at her. She loves that. But it would take a lot more salad to really make her fall head over heels in love with me, and I doubted I could get it done by the end of the year. I kept searching for that woman with my salads overhead, but I ultimately would remain alone and loveless for the rest of the year. So instead, I went venturing down the mine shafts to level 80 and beyond. I harvested pumpkins on the 14th of fall, and on the 16th of fall I attended the harvest display, where I played a rigged game of guess whether the arrow will land on orange or green. It usually lands on green, and I used my winnings to buy a rare crow and a star drop, a mysterious and powerful food that raised my overall stamina bar permanently. By the 17th, I had finished work on my chicken coop and barn, completing my preparations for chickens and cows in the long winter that lay ahead of me. In the meantime, I was now finally able to use the minerals I'd discovered down the mine shaft to build up 2 sprinklers in my crop arrangements, turning the game into Factorio. My farm was now automated. On the 18th, I arose to the exciting machinery of my sprinklers, now doing all my farming for me, and I was free to pursue any adventure, not weighed down by my daily watering duties anymore. Well, at least, that was the goal. I still needed a lot more resources to complete and scale my whole sprinkler system up to the grand scale I had envisioned for my farm in the first place. Fall drew to a close, and between the 18th and the 20th, I finally organized how I stored all my resources. Only so late now, since I had finally discovered most of the resources I was actually using in the first place, and I could intelligibly catalog all my loot in a color-coded system of chests that made sense. And with the house expansion now completed, I enjoyed happy days on the farm. The fields self-watered, the cows mooing in the grass, and everything just so. It was time for a vacation, so I boarded the bus to explore the desert with Pam, the bus driver, and I brought back cacti and coconuts to feed me and keep me healthy for the long winter that was about to set in. And so by the end of fall and the spooky hedge maze festival, I found a helmet in my journeys down the mine shafts, and I had made my way past level 100 as I maintained my whole upgraded farm and its crops and animals. And when the time came, winter hit me out of nowhere. At this point, I actually stopped streaming the challenge and I decided to just play the game entirely on my own. I felt like this was important for cultivating the joy of learning to be completely happy, left totally to one's own devices. And I think that's the ultimate superpower, learning to be happy alone. Getting lost in one's pursuits and hobbies, not for the sake of acquiring money or meeting some ulterior motive, but for savoring the joy of farming itself. At first it felt lonely and quiet, but then it grew more pleasant. And even the daily act of chopping down trees and clearing land for spring day by day led me to the full engagement of all my faculty as I had learned up till that point. Even just planning how to arrange the trees for the next season was an occasion for much planning deep into the wee hours of the dawn, where I turned in for bed at a late hour. Winter is a time of renewal, planning, and patience. I watched the snows fall, I moved the locations of the barn and the silo on the 3rd, and I completed my collections at the community center all the while. Then I upgraded my tools with Clint, the blacksmith, and on the 4th, I finally ventured down to level 120 of the mine shaft, unlocking the skeleton key and with it the desert dungeons where I'd face greater dangers and challenges ahead. From here, I did a lot of chopping, spelunking, and fainting in the desert. I tended the chickens and cows day by day since their milk and eggs would sustain my energy for the seasons to come. I did some fishing and secured iridium, a valuable mineral I'd use to craft sprinklers to water even more of my fields in the spring just around the corner. I reorganized my farm, planted trees, and finally, after the long rest, spring 1st had arrived. And it felt like everything was starting again, this time with 10 times the momentum, knowledge, and sense of renewal from the previous year. No feeling really compares with that of a fresh start. The year of survival had passed, and the year of learning lay ahead. Anyway, I really enjoyed this challenge. I've wanted to do this for a long time, but it did take 26 hours to film, so unfortunately, it does take some time, but if you want to see the entire run, except winter, which I filmed on my own, it is available on my VOD channel. I do hope you enjoyed. I'm AA, a big thanks to my beloved patrons and channel members, who love it when I throw salad at them. Let me know what you thought of this. It's a bit different from usual, but until then, have a good day.